Hello, today we're going to be looking at religion, social change and the work of Weber. So this is for the AQA belief in society. Now the objectives today are simply to look at religion and social change and the relationship between these two areas, and then to evaluate Weberian perspectives on religion and begin to look at modern examples of social change as well, which we'll discuss further in subsequent videos. Now, the relationship between religion and social change, as we should know by now, when we're talking about the various perspectives, they've all got varying understandings as to how religion acts in society and the main function of it. Some argue that it's conservative force, so it's there to maintain social solidarity and value consensus, whilst others argue it can have the potential to be a revolutionary force, so therefore creating a huge social change. Whilst others argue religion is shaped by society, so change in society then leads to changes in religion, and rather than the other way around. Now you can see this aptly shown in this little diagram on the first slide here. So as we can see, religion prevents social change, therefore it is conservative force. And then when religion is considered a radical force, so religion causes the social change, so therefore it's going to create a revolution within that part of society. And then religion as shaped by society, so change in society, so social change leads to changes in religion as a result. Now throughout this video we're going to go bit by bit through this and each stage of this diagram, and then we're going to look at Weber. Now the first one we're going to look at is religion as a conservative force. Now many argue that religion is actually there to prevent any form of social change. And as we can see through some of the angles or perspectives that we've really looked at, many of them do argue this. So the view that religion primarily acts to prevent change is supported by functionalists who argue that religion benefits society by promoting stability and integration. They promote this obviously through values and sharing them, and obviously that unites the social solidarity and ensures that the groups are binded further together as a result. Whilst Marxists argue that it benefits the ruling class by helping to promote false class consciousness and thereby retaining ruling class power. Whilst obviously through scripture, etc., they make sure that the proletariat stay within their pre-given spaces and carry on consuming that bourgeoisie ideology so that the superstructure and the economy is further supported by their workforce. Whilst most feminists who argue that it helps retain patriarchal power. So as we know by now, when we look at feminists, they do indeed see that religion is there as an oppressive force rather than a revolutionary force, because most men are the power holders, so therefore they'll ensure that religious doctrine and ideology still remains dominant and supporting their aims in society. Now, from those three perspectives, we can immediately see that religion, according to them, is seen as a conservative force. So, what do we mean by the term conservative force? It's simply broken down into these 2 points here. It's preventing social change and it's preserving traditional values and beliefs. So, ensuring that individuals are not trying to break out of the mould and dominate or change the characteristics of society as a result. Obviously, if we're going to look at a religion which really promotes traditional beliefs, it would be looking at the Amish. They obviously really reinforce the idea that tradition is the best, and obviously varying from these traditional beliefs are not cohesive for the community, and often that will enforce or ensure that those people are removed from the community because they don't want any form of social change as a result. They want to carry on living their modest lifestyles within the word of God, and they don't want to break free of these realms, so they want to ensure that they stay as it is stated within scripture, and they don't want to break away from those values and beliefs. So the Amish are really a perfect example when we are looking at seeing that how religions acts as a conservative force without trying to break away from any of the mainstream ideology. Now, the two characteristics of preventing social change and preserving traditional values and beliefs usually go together. So, for example, successive leaders of the Roman Catholic Church have supported traditional sexual morality that opposes sex outside of marriage and abortion. By supporting tradition, they've been opposing change. So, therefore, they're making sure that, okay, we're not going to have any form of revolution on our hands in terms of our understanding of scripture, as well as individuals will continue not to have sex outside of marriage and not have abortions because they want to maintain those traditional beliefs as a result, because they don't want to buck the trend that the religion is really starting to promote here. However, when traditional values have already lost their importance, religion can sometimes be a force for change by supporting traditional values. So, for example, in Iran in 1979, the Shia, who were the westernized the country and thereby overthrow many traditional Islamic views, was replaced in an Islamic revolution by Ayatollah Khomeini. Thus, religion caused change at the same time as supporting traditional values. So, what we can see here is the conservative force doesn't always necessarily mean that it's going to create a radical difference. It could literally mean that it's going to bring it back to those traditional values. So it's going to undo that westernization that was happening in Iran and bring them back to those traditional Islamic values, and which then can bind society together. And if we're going to take it from the functionist perspective, therefore, then it will be promoting that social solidarity as a result, rather than the individualized approaches to religion, because everyone will be binded by those traditional values yet again, rather than having that pick and choose culture in which it's consumer orientated and they can choose the religions that are best suited for them, as we see in the westernized societies. Now, we're going to move on to religion as a radical force. So, obviously, again, so what we can see from our diagram that's in front of us, religion causes the social changes in society, which arguably makes it a revolutionary force, which means that it's going to create and mould a new point within society that will then force a change in the values and beliefs of that society as a result. Now, religion as a radical force, the view that religion can be a radical force, that is, a force for change, is supported by neo-Marxists such as Otto Maduro in 1982, who points out how Roman Catholic liberation theology in Latin America shows that religion can sometimes become a force for radical change. Now, liberation theology is absolutely crucial in terms of understanding radical change, because obviously it saw within El Salvador and Nicaragua that the Catholic Church actually didn't side with the bourgeoisie anymore and then started to side with the proletariat, which then saw them change the way in which they argued how land should be distributed. And they argued that it should be distributed from the rich to the poor. So therefore there was a massive change in terms of the religious ideology as a result. Whilst Max Weber, who we're going to really delve deep into in a little bit, he would argue that religion could be used to support any set of beliefs, including those that led to changes in society. Now, there are three elements that could potentially define the capacity of religion as to affect social change, and they are determined by culture and social location for our first two key terms that we're looking at. So, in societies where religious beliefs are central to the culture, anyone wishing to produce change tends to use the religious legitimation for their actions. So, in Britain, religion plays a less central role, so it's less significant in justifying social change. So, obviously, in countries such as when we're looking at those Latin American societies where the liberation theology really started to flourish, they used religion as a role to justify their need for a social change. Social location, where an established church or other religious organisations play a major role in political and economic life, there is a considerable scope for religion to have an impact on the processes of change. So, obviously, for us, in terms of the UK, the church doesn't really inform our political ideology, whilst in some countries, such as the US, obviously we know that if the church really wanted to have a massive say as to how they should reform their political landscape as well as their economic landscape, they could have the potential to create a change if they wanted to. If they wanted to buck the trend away from the bourgeoisie, or they wanted to destabilise society as a result. Now, the last key term that will determine whether it's going to be conservative or radical is the internal organisation. So, religion with a strong centralised source of authority have more chance of affecting events. So, those religions that are stable and are able to unite a community by having one central figure administering the doctrine, they will be more likely to have an immediate effect because they could dictate to their community as to how they should act, and then more than likely the community will do so. Meanwhile, smaller, less centralized religions will not have the same ability to affect change in society. Now, the last point that we're looking at is religion as shaped by society. So, changes in society through political or economic or even social changes could change the ideology which is promoted within the religion. So, we can often see with laws that are then created and really manifested within that particular society can have a particular effect on the religious doctrine, as well as making them shift their beliefs and traditions to match the desirable outcome for that government. So, obviously, we can see this in terms of the promotion of same sex marriages, where traditional ideology now has had to shift to ensure that they can obviously meet the new demands of marrying same sex couples. And obviously, that means revising some of the community's beliefs to ensure that they can meet the new political landscape as well as the changes in society's equality laws. Now, there are several theorists that actually argue that religion is shaped by those changes in society, and we're going to break them down bit by bit by bit here. And now, the main people that we're going to look at are functionalists, Marxists, postmodernism, and then the theory of secularisation. Obviously, I know for us right now, these two here we haven't really covered just yet. So, as we really delve deeper into these videos, we'll explore those views further, and then that will help you inform your opinions about this idea here that religion is shaped by the changes in society, because you'll understand the relationship that they have with one another as a result. Now, the first one we're looking at here is functionalism, who believe that as society evolves, it would lead to a change in the role of religion. For example, Comte believed that religion would decline as a result of the increasing importance of positivist science. So, just as a recap, there's the term positive science. Now, it's a philosophy of social research which is based on scientific ideas of objectivity. So, therefore, ideals will not be based on subjective opinions rather than objective data. Now, according to Comte, this positive stage in our development is a stage in human history in which scientific beliefs have become dominant. So these objective ideologies will then start to inform society rather than us really picking and choosing what we believe is best. Is going to be that objective evidence that really informs us. Whilst Talcott Parsons believed that religion would lose some of its functions as society developed. Now, we're going to delve deeper into that in a little second. Now, Parsons believed that it would continue to provide basic values or underpin the value consensus, but it would lose other social functions such as running the education system or directly providing the basis of the legal system. Obviously, we can see that that slowly started to happen, and what he argues that this is the evolution of society that involves a process of structural differentiation. This is parts of the social system become more specialised and so perform fewer functions. So therefore, they really the need for that religious doctrine or ideology is no longer really required for these systems to run, because they have become different and more specialised than what the religious sector would be providing. Now we're going to move on to Marxism. Marxists who believe that the changes in religion are shaped by the change in the economic system or the mode of production. So, therefore, the economic base of society would lead to changes in the superstructure of society, including the religious functions. So, religion would no longer become based off of the ideas, primarily maybe off the mode of production, the economic system, and rather change as a result. Now, for example, Marxists such as Kautsky thought that the change from Catholicism to Protestantism in some European countries was a result from the change from feudalism to capitalism. So obviously remember, feudalism was farming the land and really being an individual collective there. Meanwhile, capitalism promoted obviously the tall rising buildings and factories promoting that mode of production there, where we can have that huge expanse of money increasing for providing that economic base. Now, Protestantism was more suited to capitalist societies because of its emphasis on individual relationships with God, whereas Catholicism was more concerned with accepting traditional authority. So, if we just break that down really there, that's the emphasis on individual relationships with God. So, the individual now would do anything they could do in terms of raising money and saving, etc., to really try to ensure that they are amongst the saved, which obviously in terms of capitalist society, the Catholicist views do not match, because they just want to have those traditional authority, so accept the traditional views of the religion. So therefore this really is showing is how changes in society can shape the religious doctrine as well. Now we're moving on to postmodernists, who believe that the advent of postmodernity has led to significant changes in religion. In particular, they see it as leading to the decline of traditional church-based religions in which believers follow rules laid out by their religion, and the growth of New Age beliefs where people can pick and choose their own belief systems. This has been linked to meta-narratives. Now, we're really going to delve deep into meta-narratives a little bit more in another video, whilst really the meta-narratives here have a similar meaning to the big story about how the world works and how it should be improved. So really by us having this pick and choose consumerist culture, we can change that meta-narrative as a result to our understanding of how the world should function and what is that big story as to why we exist, answering those big questions which really plague us throughout our lives. Now, the last one that we're looking at is the theory of secularisation. Now, the theory of secularisation argues that religion has progressively declined in Western societies, has being replaced by scientific rationalism where there's little room for faith, which obviously means this is possibly a result of the industrialisation of the communities, because individuals now are moving away from the dependency on that religious doctrine and realising, okay, we have got these scientific rational ideas which we can use that can inform our views of the world. As well as that, really relating back to the postmodern idea here, with the globalization of religion, where we can pick and choose those different types of religious doctrine, it means that obviously the marketplace for religious doctrine has really become flooded. So individuals can pick and choose little bits here and there that they may prefer. Obviously, this would decline the traditional viewpoints and really flood it in terms of us needing to separate religious views from state views, and they cannot be intertwined. Obviously, for us, in terms of France, we can see that this is what's happened. There has been a separation from the church and state, so the religious doctrine does not influence state policy. Now, the main thing that we really have to focus on here, in terms of everything that we've covered from functionalism, Marxism, postmodernists, and the theory of secularisation, the details of all the above views have been contested by other sociologists, but there's a widespread agreement that change in society can lead to change in religious beliefs. So there is that belief that, okay, some of the ideas that are promoted might be a little bit too radical for us to really consider, whilst actually we realise the core value of this whole third prong of our diagram may actually be more valid compared to the other two. Now, for some religions, we can see obviously the main features and the core of each one of these prongs of the diagram. We can see religion as a conservative force. So, for example, in the US, religious doctrine really ensures that everyone sticks to those traditional beliefs. We can see religion as a radical force. Now, in terms of the Arab Springs, even though religion wasn't the main source of the change, it helped in terms of getting everyone together and uniting everyone together to try create some form of social change. And obviously, religion as shaped by changes in society. Now, we can see doctrine of some religions have had to change very recently. So, for example, in terms of westernized states, Catholic churches would have had to become increasingly more accepting of some of the legal changes in the society. Even though they may not wholeheartedly agree with abortion laws, they would have to start to accept that this could be happening in their religious communities. So therefore they may have to rethink their approach to how they deal with this in terms of preaching the doctrine when at church. So the light bulbs really go on for all three of these prongs, because we can see that actually all of these still happen within our society. Okay. Now, throughout a large portion of this video, we have discussed the three prongs of that diagram. The fact that religion is a conservative force, religion is a radical force, and religion is shaped by societal views. Now, we're going to look at the views of Max Weber, who's actually quite an influential sociologist, and claimed that religion could lead to social change. Now, as we know by the views of functionist Marxists, they really emphasise the role of religion in promoting social integration and preventing social change. However, Weber argued that in some circumstances, religion can lead to social change. In his most famous book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, Weber examines the relationship between the rise of certain form of Protestantism, known as Calvinism, and the development of Western industrial capitalism. The main reason why he really starts to develop this is because he says that Weber argues that against the Marxist view that religion is always shaped by the economic base. And although he agreed with Marx that religion is sometimes shaped by the economy, he claimed that the relationship can sometimes be reversed, so religion can cause economic change. And as mentioned earlier, this is all developed within his book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Now, Weber was interested in the role of theodicies, so explaining why particular things happen or are allowed to exist, which allow for religion to answer those big questions about life. He adopted the philosophical approach of idealism, where Weber sought to establish the extent to which the ideas and beliefs in religion can impact on the way people think and act. So really, just to hammer home, as a key term, idealism is a belief that developments in society can be shaped by people's ideas rather than just by material forces. So rather than just by those economic forces that Marx would argue. So the idea that people with their new ideology could create those changes. Now, within his ideas here, he looked at Calvinism. Now, Calvinism is a very interesting set of ideology. They believe that this provided the mainstream ideas that then allowed and created the economic base for capitalism to really start to flourish. Now, the Protestant work ethic, as he identifies within his book, within his extracts, Weber, is a concept in sociology which emphasizes that hard work and frugality are a result of a person's salvation in the Protestant faith, particularly in Calvinism, in contrast to focus upon religious attendance, confession, and ceremonial sacraments. So it's all about that self-discipline, self-motivation, and the work ethic to continue to do those methodical tasks which you may have to do in your roles as a job. Now, Calvinist beliefs were founded by these four mainstream ideas here, and these are the four ideas that really helped for religion to change society. Now, we've got the idea of predestination. God determines who will be saved, and the individuals can do nothing to change this. So, because there are the people who are already determined to be saved, they are known as the elect. Now, the elect are people who are then given that predestination and they know that they're going to go to heaven as a result. However, they will still need to follow the doctrine that is laid out in terms of Calvinist belief systems here. Then we've got divine transcendence. God is far above and beyond this world, and no human being could possibly claim to know his will, leaving Calvinists to feel an unprecedented inner loneliness. This created what Weber referred to as salvation panic. Now, salvation panic is simply that individuals will try to do anything. They'll scramble, they'll really save, they'll practice the views of frugality to try to ensure that they could be one of God's saved. Maybe if they just saved a little bit harder and be a little bit more disciplined, they'll have that entry to heaven as a result. Now, how do they do this? They've practiced the ideas of atheism here. Now, this is a ideology which is self-regulating for the individual. Now, the individual practice the ideas of abstinence, self-discipline, and self-denial. And through atheism, they'll be encouraged to ensure that they remain abstinent from life's pleasures, a simple lifestyle, and a rigorous self-discipline is really enforced here, so that they continue to work hard and maintain those Calvinistic ideas. Now, the next one and the fourth one is the idea of a vocation or calling to serve God. But in the everyday world of work, it's not in a monastery. So Calvinism invented this worldly atheism, where vocation means constant methodical work in an occupation. So it was work such as in a factory. So mind-numbing work to an extent that would keep the individual working in a methodical nature rather than trying to be liberal in a sense of their work ethic. Now, Calvinism here. Now, Calvinism originated in the 17th century. Calvin thought there was a distinct group of the elect, those who were chosen to go to heaven, and that they would have been chosen by God even before they were born. So they were selected and they were chosen before they even knew that they had the ability to even go to heaven. So those who are not among the elect could never gain a place in heaven. So what he stated here in terms of Weber, he said that this produced the psychological problem for Calvinists, which was what we would call salvation panic. They did not know whether they were among the elect and suffered from uncertainty about their status, and virtuous behaviour helped them convince themselves and others that they had been chosen to go to heaven. So by practicing the ascetic lifestyle, they are trying to give themselves the impression that they were the saved and that they would go to heaven as a result, because they're able to be that frugal, self-disciplined and motivated person completing those methodical work tasks that are laid out for them. And really, this would comfort them to a degree that they're doing everything in their power to try gain that place in heaven as a result. Now, really, this is what he would have said informed the Protestant work ethic here. Now, the Protestant ethic was ascetic, so it's encouraging, as I've said, that abstinence from life's pleasures, a simple lifestyle, a rigorous self-discipline to that methodical work. Now, it produced individuals who worked hard in their careers or callings, and making money was a concrete indication of success in one's callings, and success meant that the individual had not lost grace in God's sight, because they've worked so hard to gain those savings, to really push forward the idea that, hang on here, I have practiced the ideas of the ascetic lifestyle, and therefore meaning I should be in God's good books, which then means I should gain access to heaven as a result. Now, Weber argued that these ideals and these values that the Protestant ethic created as a result really started to provide the foundations for capitalism to really flourish. Now, there are a set of ethics and ideals and values which Weber identified and coined as the spirit of capitalism. Protestantism was vital due to the encouraging followers to be frugal and with spending, and encouraging a methodical and single-minded work ethic, which we should know is the key term ascetic here. Through the accumulation of capital, this expanded businesses, and which in turn created early capitalist societies. So therefore, this has really given us the idea here that with all of the functions that have been identified in terms of Weber, in terms of the Protestant ethic, the spirit of capitalism, this would then provide the correct basis for capitalism to really flourish in that society. So really, if we have got all these values present, then society should inevitably become a capitalist society as a result. However, we're going to really start to look at some criticisms, because this might not have always been the case when we're looking at other countries. Now we're going to look at a quick summary. So this is the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. By engaging in inner worldly atheism, one increases the likelihood of profiting in business. Therefore, being successful in acquiring profit serves as an indication that one is in God's good graces. Thank God I was successful at obviously saving money, avoiding pleasures, acquiring profit, once seen as a sin, has now become an indication of being in God's good graces. So really this is changing the reading of Holy Word. From Weber's argument showing off one's profit once was viewed as sinful, thereby discouraging investment in capitalist ventures. Later, with acceptance of the Protestant ethic, capital investments, accumulation of wealth, and even conspicuous consumption became more accepted way to show that one was among the saved. Now we're moving on to evaluations here. So we can see that the evaluation I have really formed into a grid. Now, Weber's books have received both criticism and support. It has been argued that Calvinism was strong in some parts of the world where capitalism did not develop until much later, which we can see here in terms of Scotland, Switzerland and Hungary. So, for us, we're going to break it down bit by bit as to what are the issues with Weber's theories. The first is the nature of Calvinist beliefs. So, Sombart argues against Weberian belief here. He argues that Calvinism attacked greed and making money for its own sake, so therefore not really promoting the correct economic base for capitalism to really prosper. Now, the counter-argument supporting Weber here is Weber argued it was not the beliefs that were the indirect effects of the belief in predestination that led to the Protestant ethic, work ethic, which then obviously led to the foundations of capitalism being created. The reason Calvinists were linked to capitalist businesses. Now, Calvinism was linked to capitalism not because a Calvinist believes in predestination, but because, like other nonconformist religions, they were banned from many other professions. So they would have really only been told to follow the careers that were methodical in nature and not really driven beyond the methodical work of a factory lifestyle. Now, supporters of Weber argue that followers of other non-conformist religions also became successful capitalists, so it was their beliefs that made the difference and created the correct structures for capitalism to really prosper. Next bit we're looking at, which came first, capitalism or Protestantism? Now, the Marxist Kautsky here argues that from a Marxist perspective, the early capitalism preceded and largely determined Protestantism. In his view, Protestantism became the ideology capitalists used to legitimate their position. So really, the ideas and the terminology of Protestantism really helped capitalist societies go, hang on here, we're doing something right, and it's God's work that we are doing as well. Now, Weber argued that reinvestment and the pursuit of profit and the key features of capitalism also became after Protestantism. Where capitalism started, so as we said earlier about some countries were Calvinist but did not actually become capitalist societies as a result. So we can see this with our examples of Scotland, Switzerland, Hungary and some parts of the Netherlands were strongly Calvinist, but they were not among the first to convert over to capitalist societies. Now, Marsh in 1982 argues that these countries lacked the economic conditions for capitalism to develop. So, in fact, Weber's ideas are not incorrect. It just means that the economic conditions were not correct for the capitalist society and the superstructure to really take hold of that society at that point. Now, I'll just zoom out so you can see the grid once more. and I'll leave it on the screen just for a couple seconds so you can potentially pause the video if you wanted to copy any of this down. Now, whatever the merit of Weber's study on the Protestant ethic, the arguments that beliefs can cause change and have an independent effect on society is a broader one, which a number of sociologists support. It's the idea that, okay, change in society could really help us inform the belief systems which we then implement as a result. And as we really dealt with a little bit earlier on, now Weber has a distinctive theoretical view compared to Marx. So, as we know, Marx was materialist. He believed that material forces such as economic structures shape the development of society as a result, rather than individuals' ideas or ideology having that impact. So, just as a key term here, materialism, a belief that the development of society is driven by material forces such as developments in production, technology, and the economy. Whilst Max Weber argued that material forces were important, but he also believed in a part of idealism. He believed that ideas and beliefs could shape society. For example, the Protestant ethic, the ideas of Calvinism helped produce a major economic change and development of capitalism. So really we can see the Weberian ideas here can actually be seen as changing and creating a different mode of production in which capitalism could flourish as a result. Now, if you have got any questions, obviously you can come and see me.